All right, so up next, we are going to transition into college football for a couple minutes here. First, we're going to go over probably one of the more compelling games that took place this past weekend in college football, and that was Alabama going up against Texas. Alabama was the number one team in the country at the time, but came extremely close to losing to Texas on the road, only beating Texas by the score of 20-19. It was a 1 point win, and it looked like Texas at certain points in that game looked like they could have gotten the upset and beaten the number one seeded Alabama Crimson Tide at that point. Now that the new AP poll has come out, Alabama is now the number two seed in the rankings. Georgia has taken the number one spot after that really close win that Alabama had over Texas. And that's where we're going to go with this segment here. So, Kevin, to kick this one to you, how concerned are you with Alabama at this point, knowing that they just came off of a 1 point win to Texas last week?
Concerned? Not at all. It's still Alabama. Everybody has one of those games, if not two games, where they come really, really close to losing to either an unranked team or a team that you just nobody expects to happen. Everyone just has that game in college football. Granted, I'm very inexperienced in college football, but from the years I have been watching, there's always that one team that you're like, really? That's who came close? Or really, that's who won? Or that's who beat them? What I'm more concerned of is this rule change in college football that came out, I want to say probably the day, if not hours before college football was kicked off. And that's the roughing the passer call. If the quarterback is in the throwing of the motion in terms of throwing the ball and is letting it go, but the defender has already wrapped the quarterback up, or if the defender is in the midst of being in the air of attacking, it's going to be a roughing the passer call. Now, there was a questionable call in this game specifically that could have changed the outcome. Granted, it ended up being a penalty in favor of Alabama. It was a roughing the passer call that took Bryce Young out of the end zone. But some would say that if it wasn't for that call, it could have been a safety. It could have maybe changed the momentum of the game at the time. But what I'm circling here is this has got to stop. There has to be some form of a line to where you need to let people play football. You need to keep the integrity of the game. And now you're not allowed to touch these kids. Granted, the NFL is doing it more for a safety reason. I understand that college is trying to follow suit, but we're talking about people throwing their bodies at other people for a living. Everybody here knows the risk, whether it's for an education purpose, whether it's for professionals, whether it's for millions of dollars or for charity. If you sign up to put on that helmet and put those pads on, you know what you're doing. You know the risk you're taking. Alabama was bailed out in a potential game-changing moment because of this stupid rule change to where Bryce was already wrapped up and being swung in another direction, and because he threw the ball while he was being swung, it turned into a roughing the passer call. He was already grabbed. He was already falling. So because he threw it, that makes it okay for it to be a roughing the passer call. Alabama's going to be fine. They have the defending Heisman Trophy winner in Bryce. They always have a great core of running backs. They always have a great core in receivers, and their defense is always pretty stout. Granted, they shouldn't have let Texas score the way that they did. However, they did lock them down to under 80 yards on the ground, so Alabama's defense is still Alabama. But overall, this game was decided by, in my opinion, that call. Texas missed a lot of opportunities on special teams. They weren't able to capitalize on, what was it, Kyle? I think you mentioned 5 red zone trips where they did not capitalize any touchdowns. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, this was that close. And I think that call potentially could have changed the entire momentum of the game. So I think Alabama will be fine moving forward. They're going to be one of the better teams. They're probably going to make the playoffs because they are obviously Alabama. But when it comes to a game like this, they shouldn't be bailed out by a shitty call like that. The NCAA needs to do better. That call is a load of crap.